Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, we're down here at the bench and I'm getting ready to get started on the final version of my antenna tuner. Back when I built this, which has been a very popular video, I built it really large on this big form with an oversized coil for visual clarity. I wanted it to be easy to see how the antenna tuner was laid out and how it worked, you know, and what was going on with it. And now I want to build this L-network tuner down into a much smaller box that would be field friendly, that I could take with me out in the field. So we're going to take this and we're going to shrink it down to fit in this. This is an old MFJ 721 audio filter box, which is nice and small. And I've already done a little bit of measuring, and I'm pretty certain that this capacitor, once I get it off of this piece of plastic and these switches out of here, is gonna mount to the bottom, and the shaft is gonna clear this hole and stick right out here just fine. The coil, well, okay, the SO239 connectors are gonna go back here. I just need to drill a couple of bigger holes to mount them. I'm gonna put binding posts here in the center, so I'll have a ground and a binding post that's just connected to the center output from the antenna side that will be used for just a long wire. If you just had a random wire antenna, you could just screw the wire down in the binding post, you know, and if you have a dipole, you'd have a SO239 connector. So that's what I'm going to do on the back. I might just put a plate over this old switch here. I'll be painting the whole case too, but anyway. That's going to have a multi-position switch, and I'm going to use the switch that was in here, which had 10 positions. So here's the old board that the audio filter was on, and this switch here has 10 positions, and I've already gone through. I could tell by looking at the traces that it was actually a 10 position switch. Sometimes these multi-position switches, like this one over here, will have a couple of wafers that will switch 2 or 3 sets of things, maybe 2 or 3 places. This has one switch ring and it switches all between 10 pins. So this is a true 10 position switch, which is perfect for my antenna tuner. So I'm going to have 10 taps on the coil. Now, the coil. This monster, I made this big just for the for show, you know, so you could easily see what's going on. To fit inside of this box, I'm going to have to make a smaller coil. So I've already got a smaller piece of PVC. This is, I think, 1 inch inner diameter. Yeah, 1 inch inner diameter PVC. And I've cut it to a length that will fit in the box. Real nice. So that'll just fit in there. It fits in there just perfectly. So about halfway down the box. I've been thinking about the layout. It's going to sit about halfway down the box like so. So it's going to clear the connectors in the back. That capacitor is only going to come back about that far. So I'll just have a few cross wiring things to do. And I've marked off 10 equidistant dots for 10 taps on the what's going to be the coil. And what I'm doing today is I'm going to wind this coil. Now I'm shooting for at least 20 turns on this smaller form to get us a good amount of inductance. On these tuners, there's math that you could use where you could calculate what impedance it's going to be able to, what impedance range it's going to be able to match, you know, by looking at the L-network circuit. There's math that you could use. I'm just going with the basic architecture of the circuit. I'm going to wind a 20-turn coil. I know it's going to give me a good tuning range. What that range is, I really don't care. I just know that it's going to give me a range that I can tune over, and that's all I care about. I know. There's some of you out there that just hate that about my stuff, where I just don't get into the math that much, but I kind of consider it the everyman approach. But anyway, so I'm going to make that coil today, and I'm just sitting here pondering how I'm going to wind that. I'm shooting for 20 turns. I might go 30. I don't know. Maybe I'll go 20, space it, and just tap every other turn, and that should give me 10 taps I'd go 23 turns and yeah, 10 taps down the windings. So I'll work on that, and when I get the coil done, I'll turn the camera back on and show you how I wound it and what it looks like. Alrighty, so I'm making progress on this coil form, and I thought that I'd show you what I have done. Now, I ran across some of this stuff. Let me zoom in here. I always go the wrong way, don't I? There we go. This, I think, is grommet material that you could put inside of a hole to line it, like a sheet metal hole on an electrical box or something. I'm guessing that's what this is. A local ham gave this to me. But the nice thing about this is these teeth, they're all separated the same distance, and they would make a nice guide for a coil form to keep the wires going parallel, you know. So that's exactly what I did on my coil form. I mounted those on the sides. See that? One little hole and tiny screw at each end. I've got those mounted on the sides. So the wire will guide through these teeth and just keep the wires nice and parallel down the coil. This is my end point, and this is my end point for the wire. It'll wrap around this screw, and then it'll start the winding around the coil. Each of these big holes is a tap point. And what I did there, or the reason that I drilled a hole there, is when I'm winding the coil, the wire, as it passes over that hole, I'm going to strip the insulation off of it. So it'll be bare wire there. And that just gives me a little gap once this is all wound, when I solder on the tap wires. It just gives me a little gap there where I can hook the tap wire around the bare wire, pinch it off, and solder it without having it laying against the plastic and making a big smoldery mess, you know. So that's what those are for. Those are the 10 tap points. This is going to be the output side of the coil over here, and this is going to be the input side of the coil here. The input side is going to go to the common of the multi-position switch, and then the taps of the switch are going to come down 1, 2, 3, 4. So this first tap is going to have only one turn behind it, and then the rest of the coil, you see. And then each successive tap will short out a larger part of the coil, giving you less and less windings until you get down to the end where you'll have the minimum amount of windings, which should be about 3 or 4 or 5 down here. So that is how that's going to work. On the bottom of this former, I drilled a couple of holes where the standoff screws are going to go in, and this is going to stand off from the metal bottom of the case some degree. I've got some standoffs somewhere that I saved that are about less than 1/4 of an inch, so that'll raise this up off the bottom of the metal shell a little bit, so the interaction between the bottom of the coil and the bottom of the metal case will be minimized. So that's the former. I'm ready to start winding, so that's going to be a lengthy process. So I won't bother you with it. I'll show you the completed coil when I'm done winding it, and then we'll look at the case and how we're going to mount everything and get all the parts mounted. Okay, well, I've got the coil wound, as you can see, and the guides make for a nice, fairly regular spacing. It's a little bit of adjusting to do up here just to even it out a bit, but you know, that's easy to do before installation. And my lead in, my lead out. So that is going to be my tapped coil. I think it turned out rather well. You can see where the insulation stripped away. Right over each hole I've got a spot where I can hook on my little tap wire to the switch. I'm jazzed. This is the first time I've tried to use these things for this, and that really worked. That's a nice even, close to even spacing. I mean, there's a few that are closer, but yeah, there we go. You know, just take a fingernail, just push them a little bit, and get a little gap between each of them, and there we go. You know, yeah, see, you can adjust that a little bit. Nice and straight. Yeah, well, anyway, that's the coil. I'm talking too much. So I'm going to get that the standoffs done, figure out how to mount that. I'm going to get the capacitor apart and figure out how to mount that. And then once I've got all the mounting figured out, I'm going to take this apart. Let me show you here. Okay. These side frames are plastic, and what holds them? Oh, these two screws here. Yeah, these two screws here and these two on the back are what's holding the side frames on. So after I figure out how to get everything mounted and I get all the holes drilled for all the components, I'm going to take these side rails off and I'm going to paint the case. Take the feet off and I'm going to paint the case. Measure the front panel because I'll be making a new front panel logo or decal for this, and one for the back for graphics. Get it painted, put the sides back on, mount everything, and then it'll just be a matter of soldering it up. So, sorry about the camera audio. I was in the middle of working on this and I thought I'd give you an update and didn't want to go upstairs and grab the digital recorder. But I'm presently soldering wires onto the multi-position switch that's going to select coil taps for the antenna tuner. The case is over on the other side of the basement. It's been painted. The paint is drying. So while that's going on, I'm over here soldering up some wires. Trying to be really careful to get all these just right, nice and straight, and not have any solder bridges. It's pretty tiny in here. This switch's contact points are all right next to each other, and there goes the furnace. When you're done. Okay. Really touchy doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, 5 to go. Well, there it is. And I've gone over it with the ohm meter, and luckily for me, leftmost position, position 1, is right here on the end. And then it just goes right down the line. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just like that. So it'll be easy when I get this inside the device. I'll just know that the one from the left is number 1 and just go right down the line. The red one being the common wire that will go to the end of the coil. Once the paint dries, I should be ready to just start putting it together. Oh wait, now I've got to trace out and measure the front panel and the back panel for my graphics. I'll have to measure the where the holes are from relation to the edges, draw out a graphic in the computer, print it out, laminate it, spray it with adhesive, and put it on the panel. So yeah, I'll have to do that before I can do the electronic work. Well, here's the painted case. All nice and silver. In the bottom, back. So that's looking real good. Now, of course, I realized after I painted it that I'm going to be covering this entire front panel with a decal. So I didn't have to paint it, but oh well. At least it'll be consistent. Same on the back, I'm going to cover it with a decal. It's going to have the graphics on it. So that's what I'm doing next. Okay, so I'm working on the graphics here. This is the completed graphics for the front and rear panel on the tuner. And what I've done, this is Inkscape, which is an illustration program similar to Adobe Illustrator. So what I basically did is on the panel, the case for the tuner, I made measurements. I measured the width of the case. And then I came in here and I created a rectangle. And up here, I can set this to millimeters, and I can see that the width of this rectangle is 127 millimeters and the height is 55, which is the exact measurement of the panel. And then I went through and I measured with a ruler the distance from the opening on the front to the side of the case, and the distance from the opening for the control to the bottom of the case, and the diameter of the opening. I did this for each object on the panel. And then I came in here and I simply created the individual objects. And went up here, and like this is 10 millimeters diameter, so it's 10 millimeters height and width both for that hole. And then I moved it, and I would come in here with a measuring tool, and I would measure it. You know, that's 19 millimeters from the bottom, and I forget what it was, but it's in the right spot now. Yeah, okay, 27 millimeters from the side. So I just went through and positioned everything, made the sizes match, positioned them in the right spots, and then I put in the text. So these are the completed graphics for the antenna tuner. Now I will print this out on my laser printer, and I will go laminate this side of it, cut it out, take an X-Acto knife and cut out the holes, make sure that it fits on the metal, and it all lines up good and looks good. And then I will just use some 3M photo adhesive on the back to adhere it to the panel, and then we'll be ready to start mounting components. Well, I've adhered the sticker on the front, and I'm cutting out the holes. And you just you take the razor knife and you just go inward, following the contour of the metal hole, and cut the paper, and voila! Doesn't that look good? I'm sorry, I've been having so much fun putting this thing together that I forgot to turn the camera on. Made a lot of progress. I've got everything mounted, and you know, you can plan and plan and plan, and you will overlook something every time. And on this back label, I overlooked that the bypass switch had screws that mounted it. So where it says bypass and tune is right under the SO239 and right under the screws. I should have put bypass and tune up here. But you know, hindsight. The other thing is the two holes for the binding posts. So I was going to use the existing holes. They were too close together. So I can only put one cap on, but you know, that's alright. If I'm going to use a long wire antenna and a ground, I'll probably use the cap for the ground and use a binding post for the long wire antenna and just plug it in. You know, just put a post on the end, or I'll have a ground lead that'll have a binding post on it, and I'll just, you know, crimp a wire in there for the long wire antenna. So that line there dictates that this is the center conductor. This is the antenna here. Now inside, I've got the capacitor mounted. You can see on the front that that all lines up real good. So we've got our capacitance here and the inductance there, and I'll put knobs on there in a little bit. I was just getting things installed. I had to make a little shim for the capacitor. You can see that that shim that lifts it up so it lined up in the hole. And then here is the antenna side of the capacitor. Comes over and wires in here. And then I've got this into the coil. So those are all tied together for the antenna side. And the transmitter input over here presently is just coming to the side of the coil. I'm going to take the common lead here and route it underneath, and then also tie it in there. And then we'll take each of these tap wires and we'll attach those to the tap points. And at that point, it'll be done electrically. It'll be ready to go. You can see why I drilled those little holes in there. That gives me a little space to work to wrap that wire on the tap of the coil and then solder it. Now I got a nice little spot where I can put my soldering iron tip without melting the coil former. And a little solder. Alright. Wire number 1 connected. Now wire number 2. Chugging along. And kind of get a rhythm going, and you get to developing sort of a finesse for it. First couple of wires, I wasn't sure the best way to do it, you know, and I was kind of fumbling with it a little bit. But by the time I got to the fourth wire or so, I kind of had a method that worked pretty well. So, going a lot quicker. Last 2 wires. And then the antenna tuner will be done. Sorry if I'm in the shot here. I'm kind of focusing on what I'm doing and not where the camera's pointed. I guess I should check that, huh? Yeah, it looks like you can see what I'm doing. Here we are. Here we go, last solder joint. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. Done! Our completed antenna tuner. All our taps in place. I might mess with those a little bit there. Looks a little cleaner. All the wiring's done in the back. So this is the transmit side here, and it comes into the coil, and this is the common lead that goes to the switch. So when the switch is over on position 1, it's bypassing all of the coil up to this point, and we only have this much inductance. When we put the switch on 2, then this wire is connected, and all of this part of the coil is bypassed, and we have this much inductance, and on down the way until we get to 10, where we have pretty much the full coil then in place. So this side over here, it'll be minimum inductance. Switched over that way, it'll be maximum inductance. And then the capacitor is, the 2 gangs are wired together here with this lead that comes along over to the antenna side. And then this side of it is the ground, and it should get a ground from the chassis through the screws, but I went ahead and wired a ground as well just to be sure that we get a good ground on the frame of the capacitor. And that's coming over here to the ground lugs on the SO239s. And then our bypass switch, I got a wire in that side of the bypass switch. We're not quite done. One more wire, got to go from here to the antenna output for the bypass switch. I joined 2 of the sides of this switch together, so I've got 2 sets of contacts moving just to make sure we got really good contact if we're going to, put it in bypass mode. So, one more wire to go from here to there for our bypass. Then we're done, and I'll put the sides back on it and try it out. And here's the finished tuner. It looks alright. Again, you can plan and you have an oversight. I should have shrunk that text a little bit. My L is covered up by this side. So it's not perfect, but you know what? That's okay. So this is capacitance, and as you can see, that pointer lines up, so that's halfway. And this is our inductance. 10 positions. So that looks really good. Back panel. Yeah, like I said, it's not perfect, but it'll work. I'm going to go play around with it. We'll see. And there's the inside with our nicely wound coil. Everything's wired up. Alright, we got it all hooked up. I've got my end-fed wire hooked into the tuner. We've got the little cross needle SWR meter there, and I've got the Yaesu 817 sitting here in CW mode. We're on 40 meters. So first thing we want to do, capacitor's in the middle. And what I'm going to do is turn the inductor, and I'm going to listen for a peak in the static. Alright, it got loudest about there. So we will, okay. Nobody's on that frequency. I'll listen first. Okay, so if you can see on that meter, we have some reflected power. So now I'm going to tweak the capacitor. Up, right there. 1 to 1. Well, close. That's pretty close. We could also try moving the inductor one switch in one way. Nope, got worse. Take it back one switch. Oh, there we go. Yep, there we go. That's better. So what you can do on an L network tuner, you might find that in one coil position, you won't get the SWR quite all the way down. But if you go one switch in either direction and then retune, well, as you can see, the reflected meter isn't even moving. So we're tuned on 40 meters. There's 20. Find a quiet spot. There we are. There you go. Tuned up on 20. So there you go. The antenna tuner works. So in an upcoming video, I will take this out into the field with a piece of wire and an alligator clip, and we'll try to load up some bizarre things with it and see how it works. Maybe make a contact off of a baseball field backstop or something. Who knows? Or a fence. We'll take it out and we'll play with it in the field, make some contacts. But there you go. The old MFJ is no more, and now we have our L network tuner in a small, convenient case, ready to go into a backpack and take out in the field. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.